Are you ready for the word?
Yes,
Turn to Leviticus 23. There are 4 Moedim. That is to say Yahweh's appointed times. There are 4 Moedim that are yet to be fulfilled. Yeshua fulfilled the first 4 in perfect precision. You know that. And what I mean by that is that the patterns outlined in Torah for the celebration of Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Shavuot or Pentecost, Yeshua fulfilled those precisely on the exact days that the pattern foreshadowed. Perfectly. He went into his father's house on the 10th day of the first month. He was slain on the 14th day of the first month. He was resurrected on the 16th day of the first month. And he sent the Ruach HaKodesh, just as he promised, counting 50 days on the 50th day, counting from first fruits. A person would have to be dense and deeply deceived to not know and understand that if he fulfilled the first 4 that way, then it is a surety that he's going to fulfill the next 4 exactly the same. That is, he will do it precisely when the pattern shows us. Colossians 2:17 says this, the holy days are shadows of things to come. Now, for something to be a shadow, it has to be an outline, an exact outline of that which is casting the shadow. So the Moedim are exact outlines of what the Messiah will yet do. That is, what he's going to do on the first day of the 7th month, what he's going to do on the 10th day of the 7th month, what he's going to do on the 15th day of the 7th month, and what he's going to do at the end of the age. There are 4 yet to be fulfilled. That is Yam Ru on the first day of the 7th month, Yom Kippur on the 10th day of the 7th month, and Suko beginning on the 15th day of the 7th month. And then the 4th one that I'm referring to is the one we oftentimes forget that it is a Moedim, is the Sabbath, the 7th day. The Sabbath is a weekly reminder that this age is going to come to an end, and it will come to a close at the end of the 6,000th year. At the end of the 6th day, there is a Sabbath rest that's coming. With that being said, what we're going to do today is prepare our hearts for the 3 Moedim that are coming upon us beginning this next week. We're going to go over all 3 briefly, talking about what we are to do and when we are to do it. So let's begin reading in Leviticus 23, where all 7 or 8 of the Moedim are listed in order there. Leviticus 23 verse 1 says this, Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocation, even these are my feasts. So no teaching on the Moedim ought to be done without first announcing that these are not the feast of the Jews. These are Yahweh's feasts. He declares they're his feasts. The feast of Yahweh, my feast. And the word translated feast there, you know, is Moedim, and it means appointed times. But in keeping with the instruction that we're given in verse 2, I hereby on this day call out to, proclaim, make known unto you that we have appointments with our Creator coming up, and our presence is requested at these holy convocations. That's what verse 2 said that I am to do, that we are to do. The first one that we're going to observe is going to be Yam Ru. So let's read about it, beginning in verse 23. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein, but you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. We just read 23, 24, 25. And I've grown to love and appreciate the simplicity of the instructions that Torah gives us concerning the holy days. It is only the doctrines of men that make them complicated. They're not really complicated at all. The only complication concerning them comes about because men have tried to hide these important events from us by changing and altering our calendars. But once you understand the calendar, the actual events themselves are simple to keep. That being said, though, I did struggle with their simplicity for quite a while until I read Exodus 12:2. Exodus 12:2 says, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." Well, once you understand that verse, then establishing the when for each of the Moedim becomes fairly simple. The first month of the year is the month when wheat is in the Abib stage, according to Exodus 12:2. The first month of the year is when the wheat is in the Abib stage, or to put it into Alabama terms, the first month of the year is marked by the new moon that occurs when the daffodils are blooming. That's the first sign we have around here that I've noticed that a new year is about to start. You look for the new moon, you look for the daffodils, you know you're about to start a new year. Once you mark Rosh Chodesh, which is the Hebrew word used in Exodus 12:2, the beginning of months is Rosh Chodesh, means the head of the month of the year for you. Then using the moon, we can mark and count to every appointment Yahweh has for us. So from one new moon to the next, we count the months. We are now 6 days away from the first day of the 7th month. Now, what are we told about the first day of the 7th month? It's so very simple. If we try to make it more complicated than what's written right here, what we've just read, it might be the spirit of a Pharisee working inside of us, because it is so very simple. We're told to do 3 simple things for Yom Teruah. What are they?
Have a Sabbath.
Have a Sabbath. What does that mean?
Gotta quit my job.
Rest. Cease from servile work. We're told this part twice, as if this is the part we need to be exhorted the most on.
Right.
What's the second thing?
Memorial.
A memorial of doing what?
Blowing trumpets.
Blowing the trumpets is what it says in the King James Version. So we'll talk about that more in a bit. We'll just go with the King James Version right now. What's the third thing?
Holy convocation.
Have a holy convocation. Anybody know what the word convocation means? Means to assemble, but it means more than that. What are the Moedim? What do we do during the Moedim? That's a vague question. I know it's hard to answer.
Convene.
We convene, we assemble, we meet, but the purpose of our meeting is to rehearse. So that word convocation, go look it up. It means a rehearsal, to assemble for the purpose of rehearsing. So we assemble to rehearse something. For instance, for thousands of years, they assembled and rehearsed the lamb coming into the house, the lamb being slain, the resurrection of the Messiah, and the giving of the Ruach HaKodesh. They rehearsed it on the exact days that it was going to take place. Well, that's exactly what we do with these next feasts. We are rehearsing something that's going to take place in the future. Okay? No wonder John said in his first epistle, when we look at these 3 simple things, have a Sabbath, a memorial blowing trumpets, a holy convocation, no wonder John said in 1 John 5:3, for this is the love of Yahweh, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not grievous, they're not a burden, they're easy to do. What does man say about the commandments?
Too hard.
Nobody can keep them, they're too hard to keep.
Bondage.
They're bondage. Yahweh knew they were too hard, and so that's the reason He did away with them. That's what man says. John said, this is the love of Yahweh, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not grievous. They're not burdensome, okay? The Good News Bible translates Deuteronomy 30, verse 11 this way: the command that I'm giving you today is not too difficult nor beyond your reach. That's awesome. They're not too difficult. They're not beyond your reach. I'll say this for your sake, Jay. You want me to tell you what is difficult? Celebrating Easter and try to make it about the resurrection. That's difficult. You want me to tell you what's difficult? Ignoring the dozens of scripture that tell you to remember the Sabbath, that it is a perpetual command, and choosing to ignore it and replace it with a first day of the week celebration, trying to connect it somehow to the resurrection.
Yes.
That's difficult. But it's not difficult keeping Yahweh's command. Keeping Yam Ru is not hard. However, we do need to talk about the phrase, a memorial of blowing of trumpets. Let's start with the word memorial. That's the Hebrew word zikron. Zikron means something used to remind us of something else. So the blowing of trumpets is something we do that is meant to cause us to remember something else. Or it could be something we do, and the doing of it causes Yahweh to remember us. What we do goes up as a memorial before Him, causing Him to remember us. Let's break it down further. You know, and I know you know, but let's go over it. The word for blow, the Hebrew word for blow, is not in this verse. And the Hebrew word for trumpet is not in this verse. There's at least 3 Hebrew words for trumpet. None of them are in this verse. So it's impossible that the verse says blowing of the trumpets. Possible. The 3 words translated blowing the trumpet are translated from one Hebrew word, teruah. T-E-R-U-A-H. Teruah. What does teruah mean?
Shout.
A shout, but more than a shout.
It's a loud noise.
It literally means an ear-piercing shout of joy or a call to battle. It is a loud, enthusiastic shout of joy, or a loud, enthusiastic cry for battle. So the verse should read this way: in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial of loud, enthusiastic, ear-piercing shouts, a holy convocation. Now, I am of the opinion that the memorial that we're to have is twofold. One, I think our shouts cause Yahweh to remember us. Those shouts go up as a memorial before Him that we marked this special day for Him, just like He instructed us to do. If we don't mark it, who's going to? We have to mark it. And so this goes up as a memorial before Him. Hey, Father, you could have and did use us. We marked this day for you and did what you told us to do on the day that you told us to do it. He wants this day marked and identified for every generation. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to mark it for Him, just like He said. That will be a memorial for us before Him. I also think that we're creating a marker for a coming event. We're reminding ourselves, and to all that witness it, that there's coming a day that our shout will be drowned out by a shout coming out of the heavens by the archangel and by the trumpet of Yahweh blowing, announcing the return of the Messiah. Turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 15. For this we say unto you by the word of Yeshua, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of Yeshua shall not prevent them which are asleep. For Yeshua himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel. The archangel is going to be the one letting out this ear-piercing shout. And with the trumpet of Yahweh, with the trump of Yahweh, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet Yeshua in the air, and so shall we ever be with Yeshua. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. When do you think that event will take place? If you go back and look at the first four Moedim, and they all happened precisely, everything Yeshua did to fulfill them happened precisely on the day that those Moedim said they would. When do you think this one's going to take place? On the first day of the 7th month. Now, I don't know which first day of which 7th month. But I do know, because of the pattern we're shown, that on the first day of the 7th month, we will be given our teruah, and it's going to be drowned out by the teruah of an archangel and drowned out by the sound of the trump of Yahweh. Now let's talk about Yom Kippur. Now we're given a lot more details about this one, but once you break it down, you realize the instruction is still very simple. Verse 26. Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Also on the 10th day of the 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you. You shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. And you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement to make an atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. Notice that the atonement is being made for us. There's no way we can atone for ourselves. It is something that Yahweh has to do for us. For by grace are you saved through faith, and that not of yourself. For whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people. And whatsoever soul it be that does any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people. You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest, and you shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the 10th, in the 9th day of the month at even. I don't know why I said 10th, 9-10 I guess. In the 9th day of the month at even, from even unto even shall you celebrate your Sabbath. So really, there's a lot of verses and a lot of instruction, but still it breaks down to just 3 simple things that we're to do. Now, it mentions an offering made by fire, which we cannot do at this time because of a lack of a temple. But beyond that, there are 3 simple instructions. First is, have a holy convocation. What's convocation mean?
Rehearsals.
Assemble for a rehearsal. Number 2, afflict your soul because it's a day of atonement. Number 3, do no work. That's how we're told to observe the day. Yahweh emphasizes and re-emphasizes exactly what he wants us to do on this day. He said, have a holy convocation. He said that once. He said, afflict your soul. And he said that 3 times. And then he said, do no work, or I want you to rest. And he said that 5 times. Have a holy convocation once. Afflict your soul 3 times. Shabbat, rest, do no work. He said that 5 times. And the warning about, or the instruction about afflicting your soul and doing no work comes with a warning of punishment if we ignore those. So, having the holy convocation is simple enough. We're going to do that on the 10th day of the 7th month this year. And that will be at sunset on September the 23rd. Resting should also be simple enough. And yet Yahweh, knowing us better than we know ourselves, found it necessary to exhort us 5 times to make sure we rest on that day. And this day, that should be easy enough for us, because that day will fall on a non-normal work day. It'll fall on a Sunday. Begin at sunset on Saturday and go to sunset on Sunday. And then 3 times he tells us to afflict our soul. The word afflict there has 2 primary meanings, and we'll go over them in greater detail at the time we observe Yom Kippur. But let's briefly just talk about that word right now. It's traditionally viewed, the word afflict is traditionally viewed as a day of fasting. So from sunset to 23rd until sunset to 24th, we afflict our soul by fasting. Now, I have observed through the years that people love to fast anything besides food. I'm going to fast the TV that day. I'm going to fast social media. Yeah. People will fast everything except food. But I believe that afflicting our souls should include fasting from food. And then, but it involves a lot more than that. You can fast that day and still not really afflict your soul. When you look at the way this word is used in several places in the Bible, it becomes very apparent that the word afflict means bring into subjection. You read that Pharaoh afflicted the Hebrews. What does that mean? He subdued them and made them be slaves. You read where Delilah asked Samson, how does someone afflict you? And the dummy answered her. But what was she asking him? How does somebody overpower you, humble you, bring you under their control? Bring you into subjection. And then we read where Sarah had to afflict Hagar. Sarah afflicted Hagar. Why did she do that? Because after Hagar had become expectant with Abraham's son, Hagar forgot who she was. And who was she? Sarah's handmaid. And so Sarah had to remind her, pregnancy or no pregnancy, girl, you're still my servant. You're still my handmaid. So she brought her into subjection. With that in mind, on Yom Kippur, we're being told 3 times that it's important that we use this day to examine ourselves and bring ourselves back into submission to Yahweh. Yes. Have we become too haughty about how wonderful it is that we don't eat pig and we gather on the Sabbath, and forgotten that we are Yahweh's servants? And if we do that which is required of us, what have we done? On the 10th day of the 7th month, Yahweh is going to make atonement for us. That means He's going to execute judgment upon Azazel, upon the fallen ones, upon Lucifer, and upon all the men who have rejected Him. And to make all things right. And He wants us to be in a mindset of humility when He does that for us, and not in a mindset of pride that we escaped. Were it not for His love, for His mercy, for His patience, for His forgiveness, for the sacrifice of His Son, we too would be destroyed in that great day of judgment that's coming. And so He wants us to remember that and to become His humble servants. Paul's words are fitting here. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 26, Paul said this, I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beats the air. But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I preach to others, I myself should be a castaway. It's interesting sometimes how we translate words. That phrase, keep under, I keep under my body, that word literally means to hit below the eye, to punch in the face. So, it refers to disabling an adversary. So Paul's saying if his body ever expresses a desire to not serve Yahweh as he should, he disables that adversary, and the adversary is himself. What does that look like? Well, he doesn't literally go around punching himself. But he had watched boxing matches. It's evident from the terminology that he used. He had watched boxing matches. And what he's saying is the same zeal, the same energy, the same determination that a boxer uses to disable his opponent. That's the exact same zeal, energy, and determination that he uses to make his body yield to him and serve Yahweh. He forces himself. You know, after you'd been stoned a few times, the desire to keep on serving would leave pretty quick. After you'd been beaten, he said 3 times, so after the first one, second one, wouldn't you kind of lose your zeal to go to the next town? So every time his body said, no, we're not going, he beat it back into subjection and said, oh yes, we are. Into subjection means to be a slave driver or to enslave. So he says, my body is my slave and it does what I tell it to do. And my body is my slave and it avoids what I tell it it's going to avoid. That's what is meant by afflict your soul. It means to renew the inner strength required to subject ourselves to Yahweh completely. So that's what we're going to do on the 10th day of the 7th month. We're going to rehearse the humility that must be present on the coming great day when Yahweh will judge the world. Now let's talk about Suko. We're going to read 2 passages that deal with Suko. Leviticus 23 first. And again, there's a lot of information given here. Verse 33, Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto Yahweh. On the first day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. So it's going to be a 7-day celebration, but there's going to be an 8th day. You shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. It's a solemn assembly, and you shall do no servile work therein. These are the feasts of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations. To offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh, a burnt offering and a meat offering, a sacrifice and drink offerings, everything upon his day. Beside the Sabbaths of Yahweh, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your freewill offerings which you give unto Yahweh. Also, in the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep a feast unto Yahweh 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. You shall take unto you on the first day the boughs of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, the boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook. You shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim 7 days. You shall keep it a feast unto Yahweh 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths. When I brought them out of the land of Egypt, I am Yahweh your Elohim. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of Yahweh. It's just a little bit past there. Go to Deuteronomy 16 and read this with me. I think it helps to simplify the instruction and adds a detail we need. Deuteronomy 16 verse 13. You shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days, after that you have gathered in your corn and your wine. You shall rejoice in your feast, you and your son and your daughter and your manservant and your maidservant, and the Levite, the stranger, and the fatherless, and the widow that are within your gates. 7 days shall you keep a solemn feast unto Yahweh your Elohim in the place which Yahweh shall choose. Because Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you in all your increase, and all the works of your hands, therefore you shall surely rejoice. 3 times in a year shall all your males appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Yahweh empty. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. So here's the simple instruction out of both of those passages that we're to pay heed to as we celebrate Sukkot. Number 1, we're to observe it for 7 days. Number 2, this is the tough one, you are to rejoice. That word means cheer up. So no matter how much cheer you have, take it up another notch or two. It means to act, and sometimes it is an act, to act as if you don't have a care in the world. That's the reason it's called a rehearsal. It means to be full of joy and full of gladness. Now that's a command. It doesn't say rejoice if you feel like it, rejoice if you're in the mood. It simply says have a rehearsal where you spend 7 days so full of joy that you don't have a care in the world. According to verse 15, the third thing we're to do is to have a solemn feast. When you hear the word solemn, what do you think of?
Yeah.
Do you think about rejoicing and partying when you hear the word solemn? No. Nah. You think of being serious and sober. So what a terrible translation that is of this Hebrew word. This Hebrew word, C-H-A-G-A-G, C-H-A-G-A-G, Chagag, I assume, Chagag, doesn't mean to be solemn at all. It means to be giddy and move about in circles. It means to dance and celebrate. So it's not enough to be full of joy and rejoicing. It means to be full of joy, rejoicing, and add a dance to it. To get giddy and move around in circles. So here's what we know so far. Have it for 7 days, which includes dwelling in temporary dwellings. We're to rejoice for those 7 days, and we're to add dancing to that rejoicing. If you need to know what that might look like, spend some time between now and Sukkot reading about David and what he did when the ark was returned. He was rejoicing, and then he added some dancing to his rejoicing. How'd that go over? I think it went over good with everybody except his wife. Fourth thing we're told is, don't come to this feast empty-handed. 3 times a year we're to bring a free will offering to Yahweh. And we have traditionally done that at unleavened bread, at Pentecost or Shavuot, and at Suko. So 3 times a year we come with a free will offering for Yahweh. Then tying Deuteronomy back to Leviticus, we're told the 5th thing we're to do is have a holy convocation on the 1st day and do no servile work. And the 6th thing is have a holy convocation on the 8th day and do no servile work. So these instructions, which of them sounds difficult? They're not difficult at all. Yahweh just wants us to rehearse, mark, set up memorials, and in the process, all of them except for one, He wants us to have a good time doing it. He wants us to party. He wants us to enjoy ourselves. So we're simply going to rehearse. We're going to rehearse the joyful shout that announces the return of Yeshua. We're going to rehearse the humble recognition that Yahweh is going to exact judgment upon the world and upon angels. And we're going to rehearse the great day when the new Jerusalem shall descend upon the earth and we shall dwell forever with Yahweh. We're going to rehearse those things and celebrate in the process. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. As His name is put upon you, so shall He Himself bless you.